You're listening to Bedroom Beethovens, where notable music makers break down stories accompanied by songs and melodies documenting growth through their 10,000-hour journey. And me? Well, my name is Cello, your host.
It's the Bedroom Beethoven Podcast.
Whoa, you just blew my mind because nobody talks about that shit.
Thank you for this. I was looking forward to this chat, man. I love your interviews.
I thank you for what you're doing. It's excellent, and people can continue to learn the stories of these bedroom Beethovens.
How did you find out about this? Oh my God.
Having something like this to shed light on us is amazing. We really need this documentation. So people like you are definitely needed.
Welcome, people of Earth, to episode 166 of the podcast. My guest this week is...
Yeah, this is Adam Mori, aka B Bravo. I'm a music producer, musician, collabs with people like Riva DeVito, like R&B music. Just did an album featuring Nico Fasho from the Bay, Sally Green, Chuck English from the Cool Kids. So yeah, lots of different folks.
Just one of them nights, baby. One of them nights I feel like getting down. Yeah, down. Yeah. Just one of them nights, yeah, baby. One of them nights I feel like getting down.
Episode 166 puts me face to face with B Bravo, who returns with his signature future funk vibes, infectiously soulful grooves and talkbox excursions. Vizionz is the new album, who sees the multifaceted artist take the classic West Coast into outer space. Lots to talk about, especially since he has stories and gems, having toured throughout the US, Latin America, Europe, and Asia, and has played everywhere from the Low End Theory, Boiler Room, and Selection. It's just another Cali good time. But before we get into it, to support the channel, tell a friend. Let's grow this puppy. Let's blow it up. I intentionally keep it as ad-free as possible, and to do that, I need to cover server fees and monthly costs, so I set up a Patreon at patreon.com/bedroombeethovens. It's a really cool platform where you can give a few bucks, and in turn, I'm going to reward you. You show me love, I show you love. Give a little, get a little. Hear episodes early, ad-free, and shout-outs, and it's just a good community over there. It keeps me going. Also, I fully get that you might need a tank of gas more than you need to support a podcast. So if all you do is enjoy this on your commute to work, or leave a comment on a YouTube episode, I'm super appreciative. BedroomBeethovens.com is the website. Feel free to poke around. And as we head into fall, we're getting into the fall, right? August, September, we're getting there. I'm going to keep the content coming as best I can. Never be shy to drop me a hello, whether it's via email or social media. But without further ado, B Bravo is here. And you grew up in Monterey, is that how you pronounce it?
Monterey, California. Yeah, that's where I was born. Lived in Seaside, which is right next door. Went to Monterey High School. And moved up to San Francisco after high school for college, and was there for 14 years, and then came down to LA after that.
The center of the sardine packing industry.
Exactly. Yeah, Monterey Bay. Back in the day, that was. They still have all the old canneries there. Cannery Row it's pretty cool. A lot of history there. Monterey was actually the first capital of California.
I didn't know that.
Before Sacramento, before they discovered gold, it was Monterey. because it has the perfect bay, like for ships to dock.
Well, I mean, so the history there is pretty rich, but why that area? Because like I do want to hear about your dad, because he was actually from a really poor family in Japan, so he basically came to the States with nothing in the late 70s.
He came from Japan, and both of his parents died when he was really young. He didn't really know his dad at all. His dad was like gangster, kind of just up to no good, tangled up with the Yakuza and all that stuff. And yeah, so he was super poor and like raised by his older sister, and just always wanted to kind of make a better life for himself. Came out to the U.S. for college, to study at the Monterey Institute of International Studies, which is a famous school there in Monterey. So he kind of defied his older sister, who was like, no, don't leave, you'll never be anything, stay in Japan and just like work a salary job. And he was just like, nah, I gotta, just find more in life, I guess. And so yeah, he saved up the money, and I think got some money from her, and applied for scholarships and got accepted, and then flew to the States in 1979. And then landed in LA by himself.
Wow. So when your dad came here in the late 70s, he was already a lover of the saxophone and enamored with American jazz. But because, Japan is no slouch in the jazz department. They might not have Art Pepper and Miles Davis, but that scene was big too.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge. I mean, he was, he always tells me, oh, when I was in college, he just loved jazz and records and Miles Davis and John Coltrane and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, the scene there was, they've always been huge fans there. So he was, just part of that, like in those days, like I guess 60s and 70s. So yeah, that was huge for him, and that all got passed on to me.
So if it did get passed down to you, knowing that the visits to his office and listening to jazz with you rubbed off on you for a lifetime, what does he think about your music career?
He's always been super supportive. He's always been the one that was like, follow your dreams and do what you want to do and take chances, and you got to jump off the cliff, as he would always say. So he's always been supportive. Like when I first released, kind of my first music, he wasn't quite sure what to make of it, because it was not his style.
So when you come home in the fourth grade with like a Dr. Dre album, they don't step in, there's no disappointment, they kind of give you the fluidity to kind of listen to what you want?
No, not at all, man. I completely opposite. My mom actually cried when she heard me playing it in the room, and came in and was like, what the hell is this? And like shut it off immediately, and pulled out the CD and saw the giant pot leaf on the cover of the CD. And I had no idea what the leaf was. I thought it was like a maple leaf. And because the whole CD is just a big chronic leaf. And yeah, she cried. And I didn't really like, obviously I knew she was disappointed, and like I guess I know she didn't like some of the cuss words and stuff, but like I didn't know everything they were talking about. I was 10 years old, and I just knew that like these were the songs that were like on MTV and stuff, and these were the songs that we liked at school, And so yeah, she made me take it back, and I had to take the CD back to the record store, and then I exchanged it for Michael Jackson Dangerous.
Not a bad trade-off, not bad. So when you're going to a jazz festival, maybe that the intent was to bring you there, maybe so you can get turned on to different music. Like, hey, maybe if I introduce him to Tower of Power, he'll get away from that Dr. Dre.
I mean, I don't know. My dad, I don't recall my dad ever being like super disappointed that I'd like Dr. Dre. I don't even think he really knew what it was we're listening to. But like at the same time, he knew I liked Miles Davis and I liked saxophone, and like around that time I was just starting to play clarinet, and like in hopes to learn saxophone. And so he knew I liked that music. Like I remember he had the Miles Davis I think it's Doo-Bop album too. So like I would listen to that, and I remember him being like, he's like, oh, you like this? I'm like, yeah, it's cool, and that was like the Miles Davis like smooth jazz album. But that was also, this was all the stuff that was out in like 1992. And so we would just go to the jazz festival because it was in town, and Monterey Jazz Festival, obviously like world famous, and it was every year. So we would just go because it was fun, and like obviously the music was awesome. And so yeah, I remember seeing Tower of Power there, and that was like one of the first times I really saw like just funk music, and I just remember seeing what it did to people, and people were just dancing. Like people didn't dance at the jazz festival. People sat in their seats, you watch and then you clap. But when Tower of Power played, people were out of their seats just dancing. And I remember just being in awe that like, just the power of the music, and just I remember like my face was all screwed up, just like, ugh, this is nasty. Like the stuff these guys are playing, it was just like unreal.
Is that kind of the inspiration of Beyonix? Because that's like a 9-10 piece band. Tower of Power is a 9-10 piece band. That can't be a coincidence.
I mean, Beyonix from the Bay Area, Tower of Power from Oakland. There's definitely some influence there. I don't think it was like a conscious effort. I think it was more just like what we had, just the people that we knew then. And Beyonix sort of became Beyonix from a salsa band. So that's the roots of, they already had a bunch of guys. Like they had the horns, they had guitar, salsa bands are big. So Beyonix originally was like the hip hop offshoot of a salsa band called Mala Fama. So yeah, sort of there, but definitely some connection with the Bay Area connection, and just the power of having a big group, which I miss. I miss playing in bands like that.
Yeah, if you started jamming with them in the early 2000s, I almost want to say happy 20th anniversary. It's been about 20 years, right?
Thank you. Yeah, they actually just did the 20-year reunion in June. I wasn't able to make it, unfortunately.
And it's really crazy. I've done 166 episodes of this podcast. I've heard stories week after week about how a particular artist gets attached to music. The thing they want to do forever. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I'm like, if I take her to like a Dua Lipa concert, will that transform her forever? But then it's like, if a TV commercial comes on and there's a kid playing Fur Elise and her eyes get wide and she gets determined to read sheet music, I feel like as a parent, you just won the lottery because something out of your control just connected with your kid and they instinctively learned what they wanted to off a television commercial.
The worst thing you would want is to be like, here, learn this, learn piano, learn violin. And they're like, nah. You know what I mean? If for them to find it on their own, that's the ultimate blessing.
If your father's whole motivation was to come here to give you a better life, and as you have your own kids, I'm sure you're giving them a better childhood than the one you had, which is the way it should be. I'm wondering, like, if you want them to follow in your footsteps, a theory of funk is like funk music was originally made by people in the struggle, whether it would be race, economics, or class. So if you give them too many tablets or HD TVs or 4-star dinners, maybe they won't be able to identify with the funk. Totally, man. Yeah. I mean, my kids definitely are not getting 4-star dinners unless it's the one I'm cooking. So, or my wife. So yeah, no, we stay away from the tablets. We stay away from, it's kind of a tough environment to be in. I don't know. It's a crazy time to be raising kids for sure. But I try to just do kind of what my parents did with us. Like, I mean, we begged for a Nintendo, and we hated my parents because they refused to get us one. But I see why they didn't want to, like as a parent now, I get it, they're just like, go play outside or go to your friend's house if you want to play Nintendo. And that's kind of the same way that's the same way that we kind of do, that's our approach with like tablets and technology and stuff. It's like, you don't need this, it's like, yeah, you want to, sure, but you don't need it. Like in a pinch, on a long road trip, maybe at last resort, like, okay, here, watch a little bit. But that my daughter's
are definitely not the ones at the supermarket, like sitting in the chair, sitting in the shopping cart, on the phone. Like, no, they're picking stuff out with me, and we're talking about what we see, because I like everything's an educational experience for them. That's the way I see it. It's like, it's always an opportunity to be talking about something or learning something. I don't get, not to like judge anybody's way of parenting, but I just don't see it as like, oh, I need to like keep you entertained, or you need to you need to stay entertained. Like, we don't go to a restaurant and just like, here, look at the phone. It's like, no, let's talk. Like, or if we have nothing to talk about, we'll just sit and look at each other and, eat your food.
That kind of goes back to what you were talking about, when you went to San Francisco and you're in TV and radio, you get a degree in broadcasting, which is, does that degree even translate into any value that you can use? Because it seems like it's more TV than radio, right?
So in the broadcasting department, it's broken down. So I actually majored in audio production in the TV and broadcasting department. So, I mean, I use stuff I learned every single day to this day, which is cool. Like, I feel like I'm fortunate. Not a lot of people, I guess, can say that about their college education. I still think back to stuff I learned from Professor John Barsotti. Shout out to Barsotti.
And before there were podcasts like mine, there were programs at college, like pre-podcasting shows, like The Funkiness Continues. And I want to know, like, give me an example of a funk bomb that would get a good reaction.
A funk bomb? Yeah. I mean, like, Theme from the Black Hole, like Parliament, or like, obviously More Bounce to the Ounce, or Atomic Dog, or stuff like that. Like the huge hand claps and like the Moog like Bernie Worrell bass line. Those were the big funk bombs.
Well, if there's a relationship between space and funk music, and as someone who's inspired by the stars, we recently, because of NASA's James Webb Space Telescope just a few weeks ago, we were presented with the deepest, clearest infrared image of the universe ever produced. What do you think of stuff like that? Because if we keep getting newer and clear images of space, the stars and planets, is that just going to make it harder to funk? Because we draw inspiration from the unknown, the big, vast, mysterious void in the sky.
Those images that we're seeing are 4 billion years old or something like that, because we're looking at the light that's traveled 4 billion light years, and those are the images that we're seeing. So we're almost looking at the origin of our planet. I believe that's what it is. So we're looking back into time 4 billion light years away. The more you find, the more there still is that's still unknown. It just makes you think, about the possibilities that are still out there. I mean, we know a fraction of what we can even think that there is to know. So to me, it's the more we find out, it still just feeds your hunger to find out more. So I don't think discovering more is like, I don't think we're going to get to the point where like, okay, we know everything now. There's nothing left. There is no unknown. Even on our planet, I mean, look at the ocean. We've explored, what is it? Less than 10%. I don't know. It's something very low. They say it's like 2% or something of the actual ocean. So it's a minuscule, and this is on our planet, which.
So when you're working at a tech company and all that, is there any point where you're thinking about music second and being a tech guru in Silicon Valley first?
Working in the tech industry was something that sort of just came by chance. I was just like in need of a job after college and broke, like everybody, and hooked up with this temp agency, and they got me a job at this tech company, and I was just happy to have money to pay my bills. So, and luckily I was able to, kind of fake my way into getting hired permanently and like actually having a good salary, a decent salary. It was always a means just for me to be able to live and to be able to do music without having the stress of paying my bills with trying to make money from music. And so that freed up a lot of stress and like it just unlocked a lot of creative freedom, because I would just work 9 to 5 during the day and come home and get straight to it and work all night or go gig or go DJ or whatever till 2, 3 in the morning, come back, get up early, do it all over again. But it was actually through my job there I met Paul Salva. And so he hired me because in my resume I had put that I was interested in music and stuff like that. And so he's like, yeah, man, I hired you because you were different from the other candidates, because I wanted to work with somebody who I thought was interesting and had similar interests with me. And so through meeting him opened, when he started the Fright Night label, and I wanted to put out my first releases, like that really started my entire career as like a solo artist.
So Salva, he's getting placement with Aesop Ferg and Freddie Gibbs and all that, and there's a plaque in your studio that you hang on the wall. Did you have a hand in that?
I had a hand in hanging it on the wall, but I didn't have a hand in creating the music or anything like that. No, so we share a studio space, so it was he had it just sitting on the floor. I'm like, man, you got to put this thing up, bro. Let me let's display this baby. You're the only one of us with a gold record, so let's put it up.
Well, I had an episode with DiBiase a few weeks back, and he was telling me about the Low End Theory days in California, and nice. Devin Hu was his roommate at the time, and you guys know each other.
For sure. I didn't know they were roommates. That's cool. Yeah, Devin's my boy, man. DiBiase too. We all go back to those days for sure, when we're all just like coming up in the beat world. Yeah, good people, definitely good folks. Haven't talked to either one in a little while, but I'm sure it'll be just like it was when we left off.
Well, back in those times, around early 2010s that we're discussing, Dame Funk insisted that he wanted funk to become respected again, and journalists were including your name with that task to bring funk back to the airwaves. Like, if there is a funk resurgence, they gave you a percentage of that daunting task. That had to have been kind of heavy. That's a responsibility you probably didn't even ask for.
Yeah, no, definitely not. That was never my intention with creating music. I never set out to be like the funk guy, or I never set out to be like a funk musician or a modern funk or something. I was just doing what I do, and I was just making the music that I like to make. And big shout out to Dame Funk for sure. And he's always supported me and been super cool guy, and still supports me to this day. And so definitely big shout out to him for everything he's done for the funk movement. And yeah, I'm honored to be mentioned by journalists and having some role in the like modern funk movement for sure. And I think it's cool that it sort of just came like organically. I never, it's, people love to put people in certain genres and just for ease of compartmentalizing people and sounds and stuff. And so yeah, it's an honor to be thought of in that way and to be part of a movement like that. And I definitely like take pride in that. And I shout out to all the fellow modern funk folks as well. So yeah, it's cool. Hopefully I'm living up to the task that they bestowed upon me.
At the Red Bull Music Academy, James Pants asked you a very specific question in 2012. Where do you see funk heading in the next decade? And it's been a decade. So I wanted to read you your answer, and you tell me how right you were.
Okay, cool.
All right. You said, I see funk expanding and mutating into many different genres. The recent modern funk thing has been awesome. And it's great to hear artists worldwide doing really cool things with it. but I see it transcending into electronic music and dance music even further, different tempos and sounds using technology.
Wow, that's a pretty good answer. Good job. Good job, me.
spot
10
on.
years ago. I mean, well, yeah, I mean, just look at what we're hearing now. I mean, look at the biggest songs of the last couple of years, 24 Karat Magic, Dua Lipa, like, you know, Uptown Funk, like Silk Sonic, look at Anderson .Paak, look at, you know, it's right there. All the big, not all the big, but a lot of big pop songs and electronic songs, they got the funk back in them.
So if you have a funk song, but you add a 4 on the floor beat, does it then become disco, or is it still funk just with a disco beat? Like where one genre ends and another begins, I'm curious about what you would consider leaving the realm of funk and becoming another genre.
I don't know. That's a little tricky. I think it's funny because I remember once in a while people ask me, you know, what are the elements of a funk song? And it's like the easy kind of surface answer is like, oh, the big claps and like the bass line and the like guitar or you know, you break it down into the individual instruments and sound. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. I think it's a feeling that makes something funky. You know, because like I remember back when I had first done the song Computer Love, my version, not the Zap version, and I played it at a gig, and the club owner came up to me. He's like, "Yo, what is this, man? That's the funk right there." And it had never occurred to me that song was funky. Like that's a slow halftime groove song with. There's no hand claps. There's no guitar. There's, you know, it's more of a smooth song to me. And like, to me, that I guess it is funky. But what makes it funky is the feeling. And so, it's sort of a tricky question to answer. You know, it's if you look at it just instrumentally, like, yeah, there's, you know, you have your elements of your disco, your 4 on the floor, your like, you know, certain instrumentation, the like wah-wah guitars and funk guitars and stuff like that. Like, yeah, that's your like disco formula. But I don't know what makes things funky, or just the way it makes your body move and just the way it makes you feel, you know, it makes you feel good. It makes you just kind of go, ugh.
So when you're jamming with George Clinton, did you get that feeling immediately, or do you guys have to warm up to that feeling?
We were on Ricky Vincent's show, Dr. Ricky Vincent, the funk. He has a funk show. I don't know does he still have it? Maybe he does. And George was there with Thumpasaurus Rex, his bass player, and so he came in the studio when we were playing and shook all our hands. And yeah, that was more of a just kind of free for all. Kind of it was kind of crazy, to be honest. But I mean, you know, I guess if you hear any stories from the George Clinton Parliament days, that's how things were, just kind of organized mayhem and confusion. And so it was really just George walking around, like just kind of dancing around, and Thumpasaurus like playing the bass, and us just kind of trying to figure out what the hell to do. So yeah, I don't think we ever really, we were just messing around. We never really came up with anything.
Any regrets? Like maybe you could have got his cell phone number, so maybe he could have jumped on a song or two in the future.
Yeah, seriously. We were just so in awe at the time. I remember shaking his hand, and his hand was like the thickest, like roughest hand I had ever shaken.
That's funny. So if I ask you about artists that shape your sound, the low hanging fruit would be like Parliament and Zapp and Coltrane and Rick James. What are some deep cuts? Maybe an obscure cassette tape your brother had and completely blew your socks off.
The old tapes that we would bump was like Crisscross, MC Hammer, stuff like that. But like some of the deeper cuts, like some of like Herbie Hancock, Roy Ayers, stuff like that. Mtume, Kashif. Yes, stuff like that, like the like jazz fusion stuff.
So when you combine, let's say you combine your love of hip hop and some of those deep cuts, 15 years ago, Snoop Dogg on Sexual Seduction used a talk boxer. What do you get territorial on that stuff? Did you think like, oh, this is a gimmick, or did you think it was like real funk?
No, I thought it was fresh, man. I don't think it's I think he's just using auto tune. I don't think it's an actual talk box. In the video, he has a talk box tube, but on the actual recording, I'm pretty sure it's just auto tune. But no, I mean, how can you hit on Sensual Seduction? I mean, it was huge when it came out. No, I thought it was fresh. That just like choosing that kind of up-tempo sound, like almost like an electro kind of beat. And I just always loved those chords. I mean, we used to do a cover of that song in Starship Connection, and actually you do it on Talkbox, which was fun. But no, I never thought it was gimmicky. I just thought, I mean, it's Snoop. He's, the GOAT,
So pandemic, the lockdown, does that have a factor in the music with the latest album Vizionz?
Not directly. Like it wasn't a, pandemic album. Like I wasn't, just like, oh, let me be inspired by the pandemic. The pandemic was actually pretty uninspiring for me. It was actually like, I didn't make music for a while. People were like, oh, we can't wait to hear all the music that comes out of lockdowns. But it's like, I kind of had the opposite effect on me. I was just not, we were just trying to survive. I was just trying to figure out like how to take care of my family and just what the heck is going on in the world and, all that.